And then the top floor where the bedroom was, walked down the halls, inspected every room. Everything smelled like smoke, but didn't find any cause. And then the medium said, "Oh, and Dad, you'll know when she's around by the smell of smoke." So I drove home to, Long Island where we lived from Manhattan that whole time trying to figure out the trick, how to be a trick. And this was, 22 years ago. So it wasn't, not everybody was picking up things from the internet, and besides, you couldn't research that. Nobody knew about that, right?
Right.
So that that opened me up to did it convince me? No, but it certainly opened the door for me to explore it more. So I was fortunate because one of the reasons that we do this medium certification program that we've been doing since 2005 is to you know have a reliable resource for the bereaved. So if I would have gone to a medium, and I went to another medium that fits this category, who got absolutely nothing right, if that was the only medium I went to, I'd walk out of there feeling worse than I did when I walked in. So it's mediums have a lot of responsibility, that people don't quite realize.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, in other words, 85 to 90% of self-described mediums are not legitimate. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
I mean, which is not the same as saying they're fraudulent. I mean, a small percentage of them are fraudulent. Most of them are just, they have some intuitive ability. As I mentioned, we all have some degrees of intuitive ability, but not enough to communicate with a spirit entity. And they're out there and they're charged, they have practices and they're charging a bunch of money. And, some of them are successful. But, in our own, my own data from 20 years of evaluating the evidence is the same percentage applies. Only 10 to 15% of the mediums that go through our process, gain certification. I mean, we've been doing it for 20 years and we've certified 27 mediums. That's not a lot, That's a little more than one per year. So, it's a very tough process. We take it very seriously. And and the other thing you have to watch out for today is, look, you know, tomorrow I could look you up on Facebook and find out about half your life, and Instagram and everything else. So, so sometimes people can be tricked, and those are the unscrupulous practitioners. There's also a difference between psychic information, uh, mind to mind, reading the energy of somebody's mind, to living people, and then communicating with a discarnate entity. That they're two different things. So there's some people that are gifted psychically, and tell your future and things like that. Of course, that's not reliable either because there nothing we have free will, and then there's many forks in the road, and something that's in the future could change. And there's a difference between that and communicating, with a spirit, and that's something that we don't score the psychic information. We want the evidence that they're communicating with somebody that's no longer in this physical realm.
What is it? What is the process like? The medium evaluation certification program. What is that like?
Well, we've modified it over the years, but it came about after my visits. I visited several scientists and researchers that studied mediumship at universities, and I kind of picked their brains about what they do to kind of vet their mediums. And then I think I enhanced it, made it tougher, and developed my own program. And what happens is that we we never solicit any medium. I mean, that would dilute the integrity of the program. So they have to come to us, and no money changes hands. With the medium, we do this for free. Um, and so a medium sends in an inquiry. We send out a bunch of questions that are geared to detect some possible red flags. If that looks good, um, we'll send them. We have a committee that looks at this, and it'll send them an application or send them a computer link to fill one out. It's very extensive. It's about 7 or 8 pages of information. When that comes back, that gets reviewed by committee. Some will get discarded. Incidentally, what I find is that if we send out 10 applications, maybe we'll get back one, because a lot of people think that to get certified, they're going to send us a check for $100 and we're going to send them a certificate, like a mail order reverend kind of thing. And when they see 8 pages of stuff, they say, "Oh no, we're not doing this." But after we look at the applications, if it looks good, we'll invite them to participate in an evaluation process, which consists of them doing 5 different readings for 5 different sitters. Sitters are people getting the reading. The sitters are trained by us in about mediumship, what constitutes evidence, specific information versus general information, what the medium's allowed to say and not, and so forth. And then after they complete the 5 readings, we have 5 different scoring methods, and they have to meet the minimum requirements in each of the 5 categories. And if they don't pass. So it's nobody is. I mean, I feel positive that nobody's going to be able to pass if they're not, an excellent medium, and that's pretty much been borne out, over the years. Some of the mediums have gone on to participate in formal research. A great many of the mediums, unfortunately, have become famous. I say unfortunately because that doesn't do us any good, because when somebody becomes famous and they have TV shows and they write books and they go on tour and stuff, they do fewer and fewer readings, if they do any, and then their rates are sometimes what I think, obscene, and their waiting list could be 4 or 5 years long. So what good does that do if you want to see a medium? Right. So that's why we're always looking to identify new mediums that are excellent, that have availability, and so we found a couple in the last year, and that's good. So it's a process.
That's terrific. I think I want to segue now as far as let's talk about your book and the medium explosion. What should readers know before reading the book, and a little bit about?
Yeah, it's kind of a I wrote that, and some people mistakenly think I wrote it as an expose on mediums, because I said that 85 to 90% of them can't do what they claim. But that was based on my own research and some of the other research that I did. But I wrote the book to show it was the opposite. I wanted to show that 10 to 15% of the mediums are extraordinary, and they have the power to change people's lives, forever, by bringing through their loved ones. And the book goes into how mediums work, what to say, what not to say, addresses the most common questions. I also talk about other evidence besides mediumship, in the book. I include some personal stories, like the blue magic marker pen that you mentioned, just to illustrate the practical aspect of what the research shows, experiential versus research. I want to illustrate the point in terms of, personal experiences. So the book is all about mediumship. It gives a history of mediumship, the different types of mediumship, how mediums perceive information and so forth. So it's partly it's a mixture, but it's partly like a manual of how to engage a medium in a reading. That was my first book. My second book, I took an about face, and I lived a kind of an interesting life. So the first part of the book is a autobiography. The second part of the book I won't divulge, because there's a twist, and that involves the afterlife. So I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But that's the book, my life book. It was for my life here and there.
Bob, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you feel that everyone should try to contact a loved one, those that have somebody that have moved on? Or do you feel like there's times when it's not something that would be helpful for them?
I think that the overriding mission or goal of everybody that enters the spirit world is to let their loved ones left behind that know that they still exist. I think they want to communicate with us for that purpose. And that's why the messages are specific evidence and not, diatribes about what the afterlife is like and long, messages. They want to give evidence. That doesn't mean that they know that that's important because they know that you're grieving and they know that, that'll be helpful. That doesn't mean in perpetuity that they're always going to be doing that. I mean, we believe there's many opportunities on the other side, and they're busy. But trying to communicate doesn't always work. There are different things you can do, like meditation and getting into altered states of consciousness and so forth. But you can't make things happen. Communication takes place because there's sort of a resonance, of consciousness, and consciousness is everywhere all the time. So some people are better able, both here and there, of getting that consciousness through. It doesn't mean that the person in spirit is making themselves appear or that you're summoning them. It's neither of that is taking place. It's more of a things coming together. Like if you in a medium reading, there's three parties involved, well, maybe more, but there's the medium, there's the sitter, and there's the person in spirit. And if there's not this resonance among the three, a reading, a strong reading anyways, probably won't happen. So, I mean, there are a lot of them, and we've heard it over the years. There are a lot of people that have strong religious convictions, and they're taught that that it's not our place to try to communicate, with the dead. Oddly enough, a lot of these religions have a long history of they themselves doing that, but it was sort of like it's okay for them to do it, but you shouldn't do it on your own. Other religions say, don't dwell, on the people that have died. You need to, dwell on the living and make this world a better place. And you can understand that, but I think that some people might say, well, I don't want to communicate with so and so. I didn't like them that much or heard that much or whatever while I was here. But I think when we're not the same people there as we are here. Here we have the human emotions, we have greed, we have jealousy, we have power and money and materialism, and there's none of that on the other side. There's no incentive for anybody to that. There's no, love and compassion are the currency of life, and everybody communicates telepathically. So it's mind-to-mind communication. Your thoughts are not your own. I mean, it just goes out there, and that's how everybody communicates. So it's there's absolutely no incentive. So these are all human traits, and we're not the same people once we're over there. And that's why I think there's a progression of consciousness through, I don't like to call them levels, but through, different vibratory levels.
Can we talk a little bit about your beliefs regarding consciousness? Do you feel that we're able to retain our identity after passing, or do you feel that we evolve to some extent?
Yeah, when I was reading everything I could get my hands on at the beginning, and one of the books that I read was the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and some other Eastern philosophies, when they believe that, when you die, our consciousness, leaves the body and it melds into the greater consciousness, which means that I found that a little unsettling, because that meant that, my daughter's memories and personality don't exist anymore. But things like mediumship show the opposite. I mean, that not only does when I say consciousness, I use the term consciousness or mind or soul interchangeably. There are different nuances, but essentially, we're talking about the same thing. The mind can act independently of the physical brain, and like talk about that if you want. There's many ways that we know that, but so mediumship shows, and how do mediums communicate? Because the discarnate entity tells them certain things from the memory. Memory is not stored in the brain; it's stored elsewhere. So they remember these things. And also sometimes mediums take on the personality of the person they're communicating with. So evidently, personality, survives too. And there have been books written about that, 100 years ago. And who knows? I mean, maybe at some point we do reach so-called enlightenment and we do merge, into the greater good. But I think that at least for a long period of time as we know it, we do retain. And some people think, well, why didn't, how come they don't remember everything? Well, I can't remember everything now, as a living person. I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Don't feel bad. I'm the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, what makes me think that I'm going to have this unbelievable memory when I go to the other side? I don't think it works like that. Certain things you're going to remember and certain things you won't.
That now concludes the 3rd episode of our 4-part series, She's Just Elsewhere, a conversation about life after death with Bob Ginsberg. Stay tuned and follow for the next episode. Two Talking Fools podcast can be found and listened to on all platforms. Visit us at twotalkingfools.com.